Hey there, and welcome to the Unknown Regions podcast. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Kris.
And today is our second episode following our awesome first episode that I'm sure many of you already listened to. And if not, go ahead and go back to that episode. We talk about what this podcast is going to be about, our favorite superheroes, our favorite Jedi, and different things in the nerd culture that we are really into. With that, what do you want to start with?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to So obviously this episode we're going to be covering The Bad Batch, episode 1 and 2. So spoiler warning, we will be talking about the episode. What I wanted to do beforehand was kind of talk about Clone Force 99 and where they fit in with the Clone Army, the Grand Republic Army. I know that you have some stuff to say about them.
Yeah. Well, first off, just a reminder, Clone Force 99 is the Bad Batch. They are a group of clones that were specifically made with slight defects to enhance and make better soldiers out of them. They're essentially like the Navy SEAL 6 team of Star Wars. With that, we got 4 people. We got Wrecker, we got Tech, Crosshair, and Hunter. I'll start with those 4 because that's the original Bad Batch group. An interesting thing about these 4 guys is there is heavy influence actually in the creation of them to the Ninja Turtles. If any of you have ever been into the Ninja Turtles.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
There's
I didn't
lot
really
of
think about that.
yeah, definitely. There's the similarities between Wrecker being this super bombastic, physically enhanced, super soldier kind of clone, and he's a lot like Michelangelo. Then you got Tech, who is very into strategizing and coming up with ideas with his enlarged brain in a way as a character. That was his defect that they enhanced. He's a little bit like Donatello of the group.
Oh, yeah.
Then you got Crosshair, who's like a dark, brooding sniper character, enhanced with expert marksman and eyesight. And he's a little bit like Raphael. Slightly different weapon styles between those two guys, but hey, still the same. Then the leader of the group of the Bad Batch is Hunter. He is a Rambo-style character with enhanced senses. He would be most like Leonardo as the final one.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I didn't really realize that. But it makes me think about how, like, The Incredibles were based off the Fantastic Four. You know, it's easy to draw from these different, like, movies and characters and stuff, you know, and just tweak them into your own thing, you know. If someone has a good idea, you know, you can make something else out of it, too. So that's cool. Makes me look at it in a different way.
Definitely. When I first heard it, I was like, well, you know what? I remember watching those cheesy movies back in the 90s and early 2000s.
The mouth.
But I will say that as little as I know about them, it still makes sense to me seeing how these characters interact with each other, as they are almost like brothers because they're clones, so they technically are in a way.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, they're exiled from the regular clone force because of their defects that make them a little different. So do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because episode 1, we're not going to get into it just yet, but it definitely shows that because we never really see them interact like in a base with other clones and whatnot, but we'll see that in episode 1. We'll talk about that. But they're definitely such a tight-knit group, you know. They are all close together. With the Army of the Grand Republic, the Clone Army specifically, you have a whole list of like specialty clones, you know. You have your, as the Bad Batch call them, the regs, you know, just the white armor, regular clone troopers. You know, you have your ARC troopers, you know, that's what we see. Echo and Jesse and Fives, they're all ARC troopers. Most of them are on Kamino training and protecting Kamino. And you see that a lot in the Clone Wars during the Battle of Kamino when General Grievous tries to take over. So that's when you kind of see ARC troopers a lot. Shock troopers, they protect the planet of Coruscant. And so we see them in episode 1. And then you have the Clone Force 99, which is considered a commando unit. And I don't know if you've played the Clone Commando game or not. They technically fall into that category. You know, then you have your other specialty clones. You have those. I think they're called like the Marine clones. I don't know if you saw. They're the ones that kill. What's his name with the weird head? Mundo. Yeah.
There we go.
They're the ones that kill him. They're a specialty clone unit as well. You know, there's just tons of different clones, and so it's really interesting to see Clone Force 99 show up, and definitely their enhancements are super cool. You know, they all work together very well. and they all know how to work together in such a way. Obviously, we have the 5th enhanced clone, which is Omega, and we'll kind of get into her a little bit later. Also joining the group later at the end of the Bad Batch's introduction in season 7 of the Clone Wars is Echo. So obviously there's that whole plot of Captain Rex working with the Bad Batch, intercepting that message of Echo, basically relaying his CT number and whatnot. And so he realizes, oh my gosh, Echo's alive. So they find Echo. Obviously, he was severely injured in that explosion on that prison breakout episode of the Clone Wars. He's almost like cybernetically enhanced now. He's got like a robot arm. He's got that weird head implant thing that you see in episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. You see that one assistant guy. Yeah, so Echo joins them. He's technically in rank, he's right behind Hunter, which I didn't realize. So he's technically Hunter. You got Hunter, who's the sergeant, and then you got Echo, who's the corporal, and the rest kind of goes down the list. I don't know where Crosshair, Tech, and Wrecker stand on that. They all kind of work together. Hunter does keep them in check and everything. He is their sergeant, but they all work together very well. But yeah, that's kind of just like the clones, where they fit in within the army.
If some of that to you guys listening, if you haven't been introduced to Star Wars The Clone Wars, the TV show, there is a lot that we just said there, that Kris said there, that talks about previous episodes that would introduce these characters. The only thing that you would really have to know is that The Clone Wars follows between episodes 2 and 3. Yes. Pretty much
all the way
to
up
a T,
3, yeah.
Right away up until Order 66, which you all can remember from the movies. And it's a very awesome animated show. It was initially set out there for kids, but there's definitely some stuff in there that adults can resonate with and enjoy as well. And the animation style only gets better with age, and especially seen in this newest Bad Batch show that just released last week.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so I highly recommend you watch The Clone Wars, and you can just watch it all the way through season 1 to season 7 if you'd like. There is a specific order you can watch them all through. A lot more complicated when you do it like that.
The chronological order.
The chronological order. If you want to just watch it episode by episode, that's totally fine. Obviously, that's what kind of brought Dave Filoni to the head of where he's at in Star Wars. You know, he's definitely I consider him to be very much the guy that he knows Star Wars like the back of his hand. But yeah, highly recommend watching that. Anyways, that's the Bad Batch, kind of some history on them, just so that people are aware. Again, definitely watch the Clone Wars so you can get a full scope of the clones and everything that they can do. Do you want to kind of start with, I don't know if you want to do a reaction or like a summary?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just do kind of like a summary of what we liked in the episode, because we haven't talked with each other. This is like the first time when some sort of show is out where we didn't talk with each other instantly about the episode, and we saved it for the podcast. So, spoiler warning from right about here. Technically, we did talk about some spoilers in the previous show, but that's been out for years, so it's kind of like the statute of limitations with that. But with this show, we'll put the spoiler warning on. So we're going to go through Bad Batch Episode 1 and Episode 2 because they released 2 episodes this last week. Yeah, to start off, there was a reveal of a character from cartoon show Rebels.
Yes. I was so excited to see that.
And that is Kanan Jarrus. Before he was Kanan Jarrus, he was Caleb
Doom,
okay.
Yeah.
His master, they were on a campaign with the clones at the very end of the Clone War, right before Order 66, and the Bad Batch was called in. They displayed their skills of why they are the most lethal of the clones, for sure. They definitely made short work of the different robots and droids that they had going against them. And then there was the funny part about the voice acting. It was Freddie Prinze Jr. reprising his role as Kanan Jarrus.
Yeah, I heard
but
that.
As a kid, weird. So they wanted to keep him because he's the original voice actor, and they just kind of said, well, he's only going to be in this for probably a little bit of time. I don't know if we'll ever see him again until Rebels anyways, but I'm sure you can probably speak up to this because I'm a little fuzzy on the first season of Rebels. There is a heavy dislike of clones by Kanan throughout the show.
So obviously in that first introduction you see Master Depa Billaba and her commander. I can't remember. I wasn't able to figure out what clone unit that was, specifically what battalion or company or whatnot. Anyways, you see Depa Billaba defending with her clones, and they're kind of getting pushed back by the droids. And then you see, obviously, Caleb Doom slide down. Like you said, Bad Batch does their thing. Yeah, so it was really exciting to see Caleb Doom before he's Kanan Jarrus. Because I don't know if many people have read the comic book series about Kanan, but it does cover that, and it was pretty spot on in terms of like a recreation of that, other than the fact that they added the Bad Batch this time. Instead of Caleb running off a different way, chased down by Hunter, and Hunter's trying to figure out what's going on, in the episode. In the comic book, it's a little different. He runs off, he finds a way off planet, and then he kind of just does odd jobs. He's kind of a bounty hunter. He's doing all these different things. Or maybe I'm misremembering. I don't want to be spot on. But yeah, check out the comic book on Kanan Jarrus, because it's really good. That first season where you're talking about the clones, he's definitely does not like clones. So when they get into the later seasons of Rebels and he meets up with Rex, Wolf, and Gregor, he's very hesitant to trust them, because, the last time you saw clones, they gunned down his master,
Right in front of him, yeah.
Yeah, clones that he fought alongside, and, in the comic books, you see more of it, but they're honestly, like, brothers to him in a way. Like, he serves with them, like, they teach him stuff, just in the same way that Rex taught Ahsoka. It's heartbreaking to see the clones just immediately turn on them like that. Do you want to get into kind of Crosshair and what's going on with him during Hunter's pursuit?
Yeah, I think first I kind of want to talk about just what your thoughts were with the Order 66 coming out at that moment, and did you feel those Bad Batch units? Because we knew something was going to be different than the reg clones, where they would instantly turn on all their Jedi Masters, but these guys are specifically deformed to be a certain way, and these inhibitor chips in their heads definitely could have malfunctioned, and at this point we weren't sure what was going to happen, and it was very interesting to see Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and for the most part Crosshair and Echo kind of just not really reacting right away.
Yeah, the confusion.
There was a confusion of them.
Situation, yeah. So, yeah, I definitely didn't expect the Bad Batch to pick up right as Order 66 happened, Because, that's kind of where in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, you see Ahsoka during Order 66 and her journey with Rex and what happened there. Mm-hmm. And that was really cool, but I did not expect that the Bad Batch was going to happen like this. So I was worried that they were going to react a little bit, but then I thought about it more, and as the scenes played out, I was like, okay, yeah, no, they're not. Their inhibitor chips clearly aren't working the same way that regular clones do. That is up until Crosshair pulls the trigger and tries to shoot Caleb Doom, Kanan. That was kind of shocking. Yeah. And I was just like, so clearly he's malfunctioning. He wasn't outright saying, like, kill the Jedi, like some clones were, like, Jedi are evil. He was just saying, like, we have to complete the mission, like, Order 66 and everything. And Hunter's just confused. Everyone else is confused. Yeah, his chip definitely isn't working the same, and I think that they cover that in the episode. And they talk about how his mutations, his brain was altered by the mutations. Yep. And so the chip doesn't work the same.
So, yeah, for anybody that doesn't understand exactly what Order 66 was, they know what it is because it's when all the clones turned on the Jedi in Episode 3, the movie, Revenge of the Sith. The inhibitor chip was put in by those weird Kaminoan aliens on Kamino into all of the clones so that at one point they had the ability to follow orders no matter what they were. It was just programmed into them by this chip. And obviously this Bad Batch deformed group, they were a little bit on the side of not knowing their mutations messed up their inhibitor chip in their brain because of their enhanced senses and skill sets and whatnot. Except for Crosshair, his was damaged but not fully deactivated like the rest of theirs was. Maybe due to the type of augmentation that he was given when he was created. So throughout the episode, you see him always saying, good soldiers follow orders.
Which is exactly what all the other regular clones say when that chip gets activated.
Yeah, and you want to hate them in a way because these guys are turning on Jedi and they were just friends like 5 minutes ago. And so then you're like, how could they do this? But they're literally forced to in a way.
Yeah, there's nothing they can do. It's kind of heartbreaking.
Definitely. And one of the things that was really cool was seeing earlier on in the Clone Wars when Fives was experiencing his clone inhibitor chip stuff that he was talking about.
Oh yeah, when I think it was Tubbs. Tubbs was the guy who killed the Jedi during, I can't remember what battle it was. It was on that ring station.
Yeah.
He's the one that malfunctioned, shot the Jedi, and then they found out that his chip was defective. That's what we're covering right now. And then Fives goes on his journey and being like, why are there inhibitor chips? And he removes his. And that's kind of what leads Rex tell Ahsoka later on in season 7 about the inhibitor chips. And that's how, obviously, Rex is saying, look up Tubbs' file, or whatever his name is. I can't remember at this moment. But that's basically what helped her free Rex from the inhibitor chip. But yeah, honestly, it's pretty heartbreaking that they're forced to do this because a lot of them created good bonds with Jedis. So it's really sad.
Definitely. And I think when you see these clones go through this, when you get to see Rex finally be free from that torment that he went through trying to kill Ahsoka, when Ahsoka was finally able to remove it from his head, he was so thankful to be free from that. And of course, they wanted to do it to more. But as we get to see in the Rebels cartoon show, only 3 end up at that moment that we noticed got their inhibitor chips out. At least that lived that long. There might have been more.
Yeah.
When we brought up Fives, he was one of the partners of Echo, and they were both ARC troopers. And when Echo had blown up, and they thought he was dead, but he was really just captured, a prisoner of war, Fives went on to take his chip out, and then he eventually got killed by, I don't remember who it was, but he was killed as a way to cover it up.
Yeah, it was one of the Coruscant guards. So it was the captain of the Coruscant Guard. I can't remember his name. He dies later on in the Clone Wars series, protecting senators on the banking world. But yeah, anyways, he's the one that pulls the trigger. And there's kind of that somber moment where they all take their helmets off and they look at Fives, he's dead. And it's really sad, but it makes Rex think, and obviously Rex is my favorite clone of all time. I think he's a lot of people's.
Definitely.
But so it makes you think about the inhibitor chips. Obviously we haven't really covered all of episode 1. But there's some stuff in episode 2 with inhibitor chips that I want to talk about in terms of like the other clone in that. But yeah, if you want to continue on after, so obviously Caleb Doom escapes. Hunter says that he died and fell off the cliff. Crosshair doesn't trust him at this point because Crosshair's chip is kind of twisting his mind.
Definitely.
So yeah, you want to continue from there?
Yeah, so after the first intro, which is pretty much all we covered, plus a little bit of side plot throughout that episode.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Why don't we go into Omega?
Oh, okay. You want to jump into Omega?
Yeah, I can start on a little bit of stuff that I got for that. Yeah. So Omega is one of the newest characters. She's kind of like the new kid character of the show. There's always some sort of kid character.
I'd agree.
And you got Grogu or Baby Yoda. You got Anakin in episode 1. There's always some sort of kid. Ahsoka. And at first a lot of people didn't like Ahsoka, and then she turned out to be everybody's favorite character from the Clone Wars.
I can easily say that she's probably up there with Rex. Like Rex and Ahsoka, favorite thing to come out of Clone Wars, other than the expansion of Anakin's character arc.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So with that, there's a little bit of people that might be a little upset with this Omega character and being like, oh, who the heck is this person? Why did they add this? And here he goes again, spoiler warning, just in case, if you made it this far and you're hearing some spoilers, this will really spoil you. She is an augmented clone like the Bad Batch.
Yeah, which is what Tech discovers in the episode. They go on their mission. So yeah, on Kamino is when they're introduced to Omega. She kind of just walks up to them, out of nowhere. She's got that headpiece just like, what's her name? The science
Nala or something?
Nala something, yeah. Mm-hmm. So she's got that headpiece just like her. Clearly something about her. She definitely has that, like New Zealand accent or whatever, just like every other clone. Do you kind of want to go into Omega a little bit?
Sure. Well, she's blonde, which is slightly different than most clones, so I'm curious who exactly they augmented from to give her...
If you think about it, Rex was blonde too.
Okay, yeah, that's true. There were some blonde clones, that's true.
I think it's more rare than it is normal, because I think the rest of them have black hair.
The rarest thing of all is that it's a female clone, because at this point, I don't think they've ever made a female clone. But, as it's been stated in the past, the Kaminoans on Kamino they never made well, for the most part, there was one instance where they made one on accident, and that would be Clone 99.
Which we didn't really cover.
I know, I just realized.
Kind of upset about that. But, obviously he was the inspiration for Clone Force 99. And he was the
Clone
first
99.
mutated clone. He was obviously not fit for combat. Yeah, it was a whole episode, or a whole series within Clone Wars covering Fives and Heavy and Echo and their whole team, and they're talking with 99 a lot. But yeah.
Yes, 99 was the pinnacle of a soldier, even though he wasn't able to be in active duty, and he was the inspiration of a possible augmented clone force, and that's where we got the Bad Batch. And so for this female clone, Omega, kind of Omega thinking of the last clone ever, maybe, kind of an idea, because at this point, as we'll get into, the Empire, which is now established, doesn't really care about clones. They just used them to get to the means of the end or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely curious because, well, I think maybe the Omega stands for the last mutated clone. I could see your point. But then they showed those pods that already had clones, babies in it. So I don't know if they're going to just end it there, or maybe the Empire destroys Kamino. I'm not sure what they're going to do. She definitely is the last of mutated clones, for sure.
Well, I think it also could be a symbolic thing because of the idea of Tarkin coming there saying, I don't know if we really want clones in our Empire anymore. And as we know, in the story, the stormtroopers are not clones in episode 4, 5, and 6, the original trilogy. Those are regular forces, trained and cheaper than clones. Yeah. And that was something that Tarkin brought up. We can be super effective at not spending too much money, and we can make cheaper soldiers just to kind of keep the peace. Whereas clones are strictly meant for war, and that's why eventually they do end up eradicating all the clones that are left in suicide missions and whatnot.
Yeah, they definitely cycle them out, and a lot of them they retire them.
Some of them retired. Okay.
Some go into training. I know that's kind of Commander Cody's arc a little bit. It's not too much history on Commander Cody, but he is on a lot of missions. And for stormtroopers, it is really special for them to see a clone and kind of be like, oh, wow, clones are so elite. They were always better shooters than stormtroopers, obviously. We've seen too much of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously if episode 4, 5, and 6 had clones instead of stormtroopers, it'd be a whole different story.
The rebels would have lost instantly.
The rebels probably would have lost. I mean, clones are just too effective at combat.
And that was their purpose, they had to get rid of the separatists.
But since they're technically not at war anymore, they just need stormtroopers to keep the order. All these worlds under the rule of the Empire. They don't need tactical military force to come free these planets from droid occupation, things like that. They just need regular people off the street that they can train for, a couple bucks compared to however much it costs to train a clone and create a clone.
Definitely. So going back to Omega, there's some theories out there already circulating at what her augmentation is.
Yes.
And I think it's safe to say she's probably force sensitive.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
100%.
After watching Mandalorian, which I'm sure a lot of you have, the idea of using Grogu's blood to create a clone so that they could bolster the ranks of the Empire, the idea of Omega maybe being the first augmented Force user clone isn't out of the woodwork, especially since Dave Filoni is heavily working on Mandalorian as well as being the lead on the Bad Batch.
Yeah, creator, he's the creator.
Yes.
But yeah.
And so it's very interesting, but seeing her throughout the episode where you could see that she was almost mind reading everybody in the room.
Especially it's that scene in the brig or whatever.
Yeah.
Where she goes up to Crosshair and she's like, I know what you're about to do. I'm asking you please not to do it. And he kind of just looks at her and he's like, how do you know? Whatever. He's obviously still under the effects of his chip. She clearly has some sort of intuitive ability. And then also you see later in the episode when she picks up the rifle.
The blaster.
The blaster. And she's able to just make that shot. And she's never picked up a blaster before.
She was able to shoot a gun out of Crosshair's hand, which is a level that Crosshair can do.
Yeah, you can tell he was stunned by it. He was like, what?
And that was the first time she ever picked up a blaster.
Yeah. Another theory that I heard on the YouTube channel Star Wars Theory, when he was breaking down the episode, is that maybe she has some form of a little bit of everybody's ability within her. So she has heightened senses, maybe including some sort of intuitive sense to read crosshair. Maybe she has some marksman skill, which is why she was able to just blast that. I think the prevailing theory obviously is force sensitive, but that's another one I heard.
Yeah, I don't think that that's out of the picture yet because we really don't know. I was kind of hoping once we get into episode 2, there was a scene in that where I was like, this is the perfect time for her to have a Grogu moment and have like a force showing. But maybe she doesn't really know how to use it yet. Maybe she was being trained on the side. But I want to get back to Crosshair actually as his slow descent into complacency and following the orders of the inhibitor chip.
The clutches of the Empire.
Yes. And as they go through their different orientations and figuring it out, doesn't really care whether it's the Empire or the Republic. He's just like, hey, whatever, it's
our mission.
It's our mission.
We were told to go do this. Yeah, you're talking about when they're sent to Onderon, right?
Yeah.
Tarkin's testing their loyalty. And at this time, he's just an admiral. I think the last time we saw him in the Clone Wars, he was a captain. When they freed him.
Yeah. So now he's an admiral.
Well,
they go to Onderon, and on Onderon, they are there to take out a bunch of insurgents. And they're assuming that it's some separatist leftovers, because that's what Tarkin called it.
Yeah.
And they're not droids. And so then Hunter is curious and he says, stand down. Luckily, I think his heightened senses realized that they were being watched by Saw Gerrera's edge guard or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, you see Saw Gerrera so much throughout these series.
Oh, man.
Like, Dave Filoni clearly really likes that character. And obviously we see him in Rogue One too. We see his end.
Yes.
Which is pretty heartbreaking. But it's cool to see his, like, full arc now. Yeah, I think in the comic books they're called, like, the Partisans or something. Or something weird. That group specifically when they're on Jeddah. But yeah, they totally... Clone Force 99 is snuck up on by these guys. They're clearly, Saw Gerrera's elite forces. I don't think they probably would have lasted against Clone Force 99. I think they still could have got the upper hand, but obviously Hunter, being the smart, intuitive leader that he is, told them to stand down. And then you want to talk a little bit about Saw Gerrera and their conversation they have?
Well, Tech was the only one that recognized him, and I know that I recognized him instantly once I saw him. I didn't realize when they were going to Onderon that that's who they would find, but once I saw him, I'm like, oh, that's Saw, because I remember him from the other earlier stuff. And if any of you don't know, Rogue One, he was played by Forrest Whitaker. He had a bunch of different life support systems added to him. He almost looked like a half Darth Vader in a way, but he was good.
You definitely hear that when he's breathing through that mask. It sounds a lot like Darth Vader's respirator.
Yes, so I'm sure many of you can remember him. Well, he was trained by Captain Rex, Chris's favorite clone captain, and Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he was trained on guerrilla tactics.
Anakin, you gotta get
Anakin too, a little bit, yes. But Tech really mentioned Obi-Wan over Anakin as the trainer, because Obi-Wan really was
he took the lead
in that mentorship with everybody that he met, and Anakin was more like, I'd rather just do it than tell
let me just do it. And same with Ahsoka.
Sure.
She took on after her master, but yeah.
So anyways, to get into it, Saw Gerrera obviously doesn't like the Empire. He just was fighting the Separatists because the Separatists had destroyed his homeworld, and he obviously didn't trust what the Empire was sitting on, and so then when he realized, as well as Clone Force 99, that the Empire just wanted to take him out, and there was women and children and elderly and everything was in this group of refugees. They weren't insurgents.
Yeah. And so I think what he said was displaced refugees, which made me think of Falcon and the Winter Soldier with all the displaced refugees.
Definitely, yeah.
Anyways.
Obviously, the majority of Clone Force 99 were of the opinion that they didn't want to kill them because they were nice people, 100%. And there was also a lot of them, and so they were like, maybe we just won't do this.
Yeah.
And then Crosshair obviously ends up saying, why are we disobeying orders? We shouldn't follow you. You're just leading us. And this is to Hunter.
Questioning Hunter's leadership and trying to get in between, and pretty intense scene when they're having that stare down.
And then Hunter does the coolest thing ever and pulls out his blaster pistol and shoots the probe droid out of the air.
Just right in the eye. Which makes me think of Empire Strikes Back when Chewie and Han couldn't even destroy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just pulls out his blaster right in the eye of the droid and it falls down. And he's, that's when they're like, the Empire was watching us this whole time.
And
so,
unfortunately, it had already sent its findings back to Admiral Tarkin. And so when they eventually, and this is when they found out from Tech, that Omega was the 5th enhanced clone, and it wasn't that they were talking about Echo, because Echo is technically a regular clone with mechanic augmentation. So then they returned to Coruscant after that.
Yeah, kind of to backtrack and touch more on Crosshair's kind of betrayal of the team due to this chip. You find out before they go on this mission, when Tarkin's talking to the Kaminoans, he's talking about how he's interested in the Clone Force, and he's wondering if they're loyal to the Empire, if their inhibitor chips worked, if they executed the Jedi like they were told. Specifically, the leader of the Kaminoans, or at least that facility, tells him, like, I assume so, like, they were reported dead. And he's like, no, assumptions mean nothing. One of them in their group submitted a report saying that Hunter, the leader, let a Padawan escape. So that's kind of like planting the seeds of like, look, Crosshair's trying to become the leader of the team, trying to report them, bring them down. So that kind of plants the seed of Crosshair in Tarkin's mind. So Tarkin is clearly thinking Crosshair is his guy. And now that he watched the probe droid of Crosshair questioning Hunter's leadership and everything, when they get back to Kamino, he's going to get dragged away.
Yep.
So yeah.
And so right before or right after Omega tells Crosshair, please don't do what you're about to do, even though she might even realize that he can't control it. Because she even said that. She's like, even though you can't control it, please don't. And then he gets dragged off, even though the rest of the Clone Force 99 did not want him to go. Because they're like, we go together or not at all.
Another indication of how tight-knit this group is. And we didn't really touch on the cafeteria scene where they like brawl with a bunch of regular clones. But like clearly they all sit alone. Omega sits with them, which they're shocked. They're like, you want to sit with us? What the? No one sits with us. Yeah, so they're a really tight-knit group. Yeah, you see that when Crosshair goes to get dragged away. They're like, Hunter's like, we go together, and then he gets punched in the gut. And obviously, Crosshair goes off with them. And then we have the scene, unfortunately, where they analyze his chip, and she says, it looks like it's active, even though his brain chemistry has changed because of his augmentations. It's still active, it's just not as potent or something. It's not as effective. And so Tarkin asked her to enhance it. And so,
ramp it up to 11.
Yeah, basically. So now he's just full blown. He's basically a special droid unit at this point. Like, he's no longer Crosshair. He's full on. It's all about the mission. You see him show up later when they all break out of there. They kind of have that cool scene where they're able to, like... It's not cool, I would say it's funny, where they're punching the wall, and then they peel it back, and then Wrecker's just... I think his scenes are very entertaining.
Wrecker? Yeah.
He's definitely, like, kind of a comic relief, especially between him and Tech. I think they're both pretty funny. I love Tech's, like, dry humor.
Definitely.
Because, he's very much just, like, analytical and stuff like that.
And I think any of you that know the Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo definitely was the comic relief of the different, of all the Ninja Turtles.
Big old goofball.
Wrecker, he breaks a hole in the wall, and then they use Omega to crawl into the vents. And there was a couple of funny, cheeky lines in there as the regular clones are trying to figure out what happened to Omega, and then she falls on them with a sealing unit and opens the brig hatch, or jail cell hatch, and then they get all geared up to go, and then Crosshair shows up, fully inhibitor chip activated with looks like almost like a dark trooper suit.
Yeah, no, he definitely has this black suit on. It looks like his armor just painted black, basically. So it's full on Empire at this point.
Yep.
He's definitely Crosshair until they get that inhibitor chip removed. He's full blown Empire, which I 100% believe that either they're tragically gonna die at the end of this series, or they're gonna save Crosshair and run off and do whatever. But yeah, also going back on the Dark Trooper moment, did you notice in the training fight when those droids showed up? Now, I know they were created probably before the Empire, but they look very similar, like an early prototype of Dark Troopers themselves from The Mandalorian.
Definitely.
Season finale of season 2.
They looked a lot like them.
Yeah, 100%. I think just the head and the shoulders and stuff. And I know they weren't, I guess, they were clearly Republic made, but maybe that's where they started with Dark Troopers. Who knows? I don't know specifically.
Yeah. So then the epic showdown at the end of Crosshair and Hunter staring back at each other with a platoon of, were they regs or shock troopers with him?
I think it was shock troopers and regular troopers that walked into the hangar and they had their big firefight there. Wrecker obviously got shot by Crosshair and was injured.
In the same spot that he was shot earlier by the training droid. And I think
true.
that was deliberate because Crosshair knew that was his weak spot in his armor from when he had got shot earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
So he shot it again just because he knew that it would drop Wrecker without killing him, because I think there is a piece of Crosshair still left in him, because he could have easily killed him.
I feel like he could have killed Wrecker in that moment, but decided not to. Or maybe he injured him similar to what that sniper did in Saving Private Ryan, shot Vin Diesel to draw out more soldiers.
True, that's true.
You see Omega try to lunge out there, and Hunter's like, no, he's trying to bait us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have that epic showdown. Hunter tells everybody to go, and we gotta run now. Tex warned up the ship, it's ready to go. Crosshair's just waiting for them to pop up. And then obviously Crosshair's about to shoot Hunter in the head, basically. You see his crosshairs on his head. And then Omega shoots the blaster out of his hand. And he's like, whoa. And it takes him a second, but then he grabs his sidearm, but is unable to get the shot off because Omega's just unloading.
And they make it out of there.
And they make it out.
So I think we'll probably go into episode 2 a little lightly, but I wanted to bring up one of the coolest scenes in the episode that we brushed over, and I apologize to the listener for all this jumping back and forth.
This isn't a coherent breakdown necessarily. There's so many YouTube videos you could watch, different channels that'll break down these episodes bit by bit. We're kind of just doing our reaction and a quick summary and everything, and we're just retelling from our memory. We don't have any specific notes on each scene that happened, so we're remembering things as we talk about them.
Definitely, and I think that's kind of the fun of just a discussion.
No, yeah, it's kind of just what we thought was cool.
But definitely what I think was one of the coolest scenes was when they were battling those live droids in the training simulation, and Crosshair yells to Wrecker, and Wrecker throws the knife in the air, and then Crosshair, with his training bolt, shoots the knife electrifies it into the droid. Absolutely one of the coolest scenes in all of Star Wars.
And in season 7 of the Clone Wars, and if you don't, again, please watch the Clone Wars.
Yes.
It's fantastic. You see that Crosshair and Wrecker kind of have this thing where they can see who can kill more droids. Wrecker obviously does this thing where he charges through, but then Crosshair has that cool scene where he sets up all these reflector things so that he can bounce his laser through the hull and take out a whole platoon of droids. So yeah, I think in that moment Wrecker was like, wow, he was shocked by Crosshair doing that kill. I agree with you. That was
cool. So I think with that introduction to the Bad Batch episode 1, we've been going for a decent 45 minutes. By the time that I edit out all of our little goofs and gaffes, probably 35 to 40 minutes, I would say. But anyways, we'll go in real quick to episode 2. We'll talk a little bit about the highlights of that episode, because it honestly seemed a little bit like a filler episode.
I agree. I think
there was a little bit of world building.
A little bit of world building with the whole chain codes thing. You're seeing where they're why are troopers setting up an outpost here? You're seeing that the Empire kind of starting to plant their bases around actual galaxy, and it's kind of daunting because what's going to happen with the Empire. The Empire is basically this iron fist that just smashes down on all these worlds. So and then the chain codes, obviously, that was a huge thing. So a lot of cool filler. I wouldn't say I'd say fillers. I think it's really cool that Dave Filoni is planting all these different histories into those gaps that we have. Obviously, we saw Revenge of the Sith and we saw the Rise of the Empire, but what happened in between those moments? How did the clone troopers transition? And obviously, because of their inhibitor chips, they just fell right into the place of being the early stormtroopers. Do you kind of want to touch on some things
Sure.
that you liked about that?
Sure.
The second episode?
One thing I will point out is we were talking early on at the beginning of this episode about the different troopers that we had with the clones, whether it be Arc, Shock, the Marine ones,
Commandos,
all these different ones. By the end of episode 1 and all through episode 2, there was no more distinguishing factors of any of the clones. They were all in white armor only. There was no distinguishing marks. The last of the times we saw the marks were on Camino, which was the base of the clones. And I think that at that point, they dumped all of that because that was Republic markings, and they made it all uniform white, which, you know, in a sense...
Other than the shock troopers, yeah.
Other than the shock troopers that were used in episode 1. But as of episode 2, the only troopers that we've seen are in white armor.
Which was... Yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that, because, I mean, it makes sense, obviously, like, the Empire's transitioning to that starch, like, no-face soldier of the Empire. Like, they represent the Empire, that's it. You know, there's not a person under that mask. They're just the white, starch white and everything. Yeah, that's really cool. And it's honestly kind of sad, because, like, one of the coolest things about the clones is their distinguishing armor, you know? That was one of my favorite things throughout the Clone Wars TV show, is to see all these different battalions, all these different clone troopers, and how they marked their uniforms, especially the 501st. The 501st had the coolest markings, you know, yet I think Tup, he had the eye drop. He's the one that had his malfunctioning chip. He had like an eye drop under his. Jesse had the Republic symbol on his, you know, all these different, and obviously Rex had, you know, the special Mandalorian eyes.
Didn't Wolf have scars on his or something like that?
I can't remember Wolf's, but yeah, I think it was to mimic the scar that he had underneath. So yeah, his, like, their gray armor was really cool. Yeah, it was really interesting to see all of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's all starch white now.
It's all starch white now.
It's brand new. Everyone gets starch white armor.
So the episode really took off right at the end of episode 1, and it was the Bad Batch without Crosshair and with Omega.
Flying through hyperspace.
They were flying through hyperspace on their way to J-19, which turned out to be, I think it was Skako Minor, if I remember correctly.
Something like that.
And it is a planet that we did visit in the original Clone Wars TV show, although it was hard to remember just because it was one of those smaller episodes of a smaller, unrecognizable arc compared to some of the cool ones.
A Captain Rex arc. Obviously, it was kind of him, like, realizing that there is a life outside the army. But yeah.
Yes, because the clones were bred for war and they didn't really know anything but it. There was a guy, though, a clone by the name of Cut, and he deserted after his battalion or whatever was destroyed.
Yeah, his gunship was shot down and a droid basically walked through, just shooting all the injured clones in the head. And he was able to escape, I'm not sure how. But after basically seeing his brothers die like that, he basically fled. He was like, there's got to be something better than this, you know? And nothing left.
And he meets a Twi'lek.
Yep.
Or Twi'lek, however you want to distinguish it. And they get married and have some kids. And that's when Rex meets them in the Clone Wars. And now in the Bad Batch, they obviously, because of Rex and different clones, realized that this guy existed out there and he could be of some help. And it's really cool to see this clone with like a longer hairstyle, not military.
The mutton chops or whatever he had there, the sideburns.
Yep, and he had his kids a little more grown up, and their planet also showed some interesting different creatures that we've seen in other ones.
Which we didn't see in the Clone Wars, or the Clone Wars TV show, but we did see in the Clone Wars movie.
Yes, episode 2.
Whatever that creature
I don't remember what it's called, but if you guys remember episode 2...
The one
Padme. Yep. Yeah. When they're in the arena and they're fighting the 3 beasts, each of them were given a different beast. Padme had that white tiger-like one with the 6 eyes.
The weird, like, mouth.
And the weird, like, almost like a fin mouth. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the planet, I guess, that they come from, maybe? At least they're on this planet somehow. There was an incident, and this is what I was talking about earlier on. I thought it was a perfect moment maybe for Omega to show her force powers.
Yeah. When
she ventured out past the fence and one was stalking up to her. But instead, Hunter and the Twi'lek lady, I don't remember what her name is now. either. They both save Omega, and then there's obviously, like Kris said, there's the chain codes that were introduced, and this is essentially like forced ID that everybody must have, so that
which even Echo touches on. He's like, it's weird to hear clones, you know, who wanted names after just having numbers, telling people to get numbers.
Yes.
You know, but Tech kind of marvels at it, like, oh, you can identify anyone in the galaxy. Which that's where they get in A New Hope. They talk about like identification. Basically, like that's a big thing in the Empire is like they're able to ID people based on their chain codes.
And obviously Obi-Wan never needed one because he was always on the run, and that's why he was like, no need.
Yeah, he's probably just mind tricked everybody.
Yeah. Everybody that he's ever... And I can't wait for that show.
Oh, that show. Oh, man.
The Obi-Wan TV show.
I saw, going onto that real quick, I just want to talk.
Sure.
I saw this article that was talking about how Ian McGregor was talking about how he's been doing like a lot more lightsaber training, getting back into it, which makes me really excited to see Obi-Wan with his lightsaber again, fighting some beast or something. Be cool to see him fight a crate dragon.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I really hope he does.
If there's no crate dragon.
We saw Mando kill one, but he had to use, like, I don't know how many pounds of explosives to kill that. But to see Obi-Wan fight it, oh man, that would be great.
Yeah, there was a non-canon book of Obi-Wan where he kills a crate dragon by himself. It's just crazy. If any of you have seen Mandalorian, you remember the episode with Timothy Oliphant, the first episode of season 2.
Yeah.
He goes to Tatooine, I think.
Yeah.
It was Tatooine.
It was Tatooine because you have the Tusken Raiders.
And the crate dragon came out of the mountain, and it was just massive.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
To go back to Omega in that scene, I think it was good that she didn't have her like little force sensitive moment because, again, we don't know if that's what it is. And if it is, that's a pretty big reveal to be like, hey, look, we made a clone with force sensitive abilities. So I don't know if that will be her ability or not. But I think they really just wanted to show that, look, she's a kid. She's been on Kamino her whole life. And that's what Cut was telling Hunter. He's like, they always find a way to get into trouble. And, you know, she's just a kid. That's all she is. And he's so used to being that sergeant, being the leader of the Bad Batch. He's so military oriented. It was cool to see him kind of get a reality check. He's like, oh shoot, she's just a kid. There's so much more that I'm not ready for right now.
Yep. And anyways, to lightly go over the rest, Tech forges some chain codes, gives them to Cut and his family, and Hunter wanted Omega to go with them so that she could have a better life, but she ended up choosing Clone Force 99, and as they are trying to escape an impound lot with their spaceship, they have her return to them, and they escape. No news on Crosshair as of this episode, but hopefully in the future we'll see some more. Maybe just his side, where we can kind of get a look inside the Empire, the early Empire.
Yeah, I'd really be interested if they would do that, kind of showing like, maybe he's like handpicking some troops and he's like building his own squad. Because I know that we had in Battlefront 2, you have the Inferno Squad, which is like a special unit within the Empire. So I wonder if he's like the beginning of that. Or if he's going to like make his arc back. If he's going to like come back to the Bad Batch in a way after, you know, maybe they're able to save him, get his chip removed. Also, a big moment in that is when they talked about Rex. And Echo was like freaking out. He's like, Rex was here? Like when? And you find out Cut tells them he was here only 2 days ago. That makes you just think of the timeline, because last we saw Rex was with Ahsoka getting in the Y-Wing, or loading it up after their whole crash, that whole big epic scene at the end of Season 7 of the Clone Wars TV series. But yeah, so he clearly went to Cut just like they did, and like as he's passing through, to go off to, I can't remember what planet they go to, but maybe he's going off to find the other clone troopers like Wolf and Gregor. But,
definitely.
Yeah, it was really exciting to see that, because that just sent me on a thought tangent. It sent me down a rabbit hole. It was like, where was Rex going? Like, did he have Ahsoka with him? You know, because they could still be together.
I have a feeling we might even see Rex in this season.
I would, if they don't show Rex, I understand.
It's a missed opportunity.
But if they do, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Definitely. But so as for compared to the first episode, which was 70 minutes, and this one being just 30 minutes, it definitely felt shorter. The first one did, I guess, drag in a few spots, but for the most part, we were just so enamored with the world building of that first episode.
And obviously not every episode is going to be as credible as the first or maybe the season finale, things like that. There are going to be filler episodes. That's just how TV shows work. It's not always going to be like boom, boom, boom. You got to like explore these characters in a deeper way. And that's what I think episode 2 did. Is it explored Hunter's mind a little bit deeper as he learns to be almost like a father to Omega. Like I think that's going to be like their whole thing.
They're dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, they're dynamic.
Well, I'm definitely excited to see what happens in the rest of the season. As for our reviews right now, this will probably do it for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, definitely covering the first 2 episodes. I know you have some people you want to thank, obviously.
Yeah. I was meant to do this at the beginning, but I forgot because I was just so excited. There are some people I want to thank. Number 1 is our brother Sam. He made the intro music that you heard last time on the first episode. And my wife, Caitlin, she made the cover art for our episode. And I'm so thankful to both of them for showing up at the last minute and getting those made so that we could publish them quickly on that first episode. And I'm excited.
You can find Sam on SoundCloud under Zafara, is it?
Yes, Zafaraa.
Yes, something like that.
And that he is on SoundCloud. He's got a bunch of music that he produces. Definitely, if you enjoyed that sound that he made, the music, I definitely recommend it. And
He's great.
Yeah, so this was our episode reviewing The Bad Batch, episode 1 and 2. I think shortly after this, we'll have an episode as well on Marvel Phase 4. There was a big announcement on that.
Probably won't be as long as this episode, but it will be covering the recent announcements.
Yes. And I kind of wanted to, as we were recording this, wanted to separate them because I think that The Bad Batch does deserve its own and the Marvel Phase 4 does deserve its own as well because they're vastly different topics. 100%. And so we will get into that and we hope to see you on that episode. And as for this one, I'm Taylor.
I'm Kris.
And this is the Unknown Regions Podcast, signing out.